Hi everyone. I hope all of you are able to see me, and let me just check if everything is fine on the YouTube stream, and then we'll quickly get started with the session. It's not going to be a very long session, maybe around 20 minutes or so. We're going to talk about Snap slot 1, or you can call it Snap 1 if you want to. So this is essentially so I appeared for the test, and this is going to be my review of the test, right? And of course, I'll be commenting on the probable cutoffs, what you should be doing if you're preparing for SNAP 2 and 3 as well, right? So all of those discussions we'll be doing. Okay. All right. So let's begin. And first things first, no change in the in the format of the test. So three sections, no sectional time limit. You can do whatever you want in those 60 minutes that you have. And the +1 minus 0.25 marking scheme, right? Now, in the instructions also and on the admit card as well, it is written that they don't do normalization. So they take a lot of care in terms of creating papers that are equal in terms of difficulty and all of that. And of course, that is generally not true if you look at the student performances over these tests. So ideally they should normalize, but they don't. But that's what it is. So there's nothing much that can be done about it. Though personally, I'm not a big fan of the fact that they don't normalize, right? But again, the way it is, you ideally should be taking multiple attempts. If those of you who have watched my Snap form filling video would have clearly noticed me at that time as well talking about this, that you should go for at least 2 attempts if you're a serious Symbiosis aspirant and not rely on a single attempt. The reason why I make that particular statement was because today's paper was very, very easy. And they should not be doing this, right? They should know that let's say if you make a moderate paper or a slightly difficult paper also, it then helps you to segregate candidates in a better manner. But the moment you create an easy paper, the problem with that is you will have a lot of concentration in small ranges. And that's going to be a problematic because every single question will matter in that case, right? So I'll show you the percentiles, etc., from the last few years, and you will see why, again, I make that statement. So the format, again, as I said, no changes. General English 15 questions, 25 of the analytical and logical reasoning, and 20 questions of the quant and data interpretation. But again, there was no DI, it was pure quant. So no DS, no DI, only quant section. Now, speaking of good attempts in each of the sections, so when you look at the general English, right, the verbal section, out of 15 questions, I think 11 to 12 questions were accessible for most of the students. Beyond that, what happens is either you know something or you don't, and that is the reason why there will be differentiation. But there were 11 to 12 questions, I think, which were accessible for most of the students. Now, you don't need to spend too much time on this. So if you're planning to, let's say, go for Snap 2 or 3, what you need to keep in mind is you should not be spending anything more than 10 minutes on the verbal section. So that is the plan that you should walk in with. For the analytical and logical reasoning, I think out of 25, 19 to 20 questions were doable. Some of the questions, like, say, for example, with respect to the binary logic question, or maybe some inference or the assumption questions which were there, maybe some students may have skipped some of those questions, a particular series question which was slightly more challenging. So there were some questions that you could have skipped, but I think a 19 to 20 number of questions were accessible. You could have solved a lot of these questions. And for quant, 15 to 16 out of 20. And this is because there were some areas that, let's say, people may not have done. Let's say some people have not done trigonometry, or some people may have struggled a little bit with that AP question, or let's say a particular question which was there related to the percentage profit, right? So maybe there could have been some struggles here and there. But out of 20, I think 15 to 16 questions were accessible. Okay. Now, what you need to understand is, firstly, when you look at Snap, is that over the past years also, and this is the last 4 years data of score versus percentile. So what they do is they don't normalize whatever raw score best that you get in either Snap 1, 2, or 3. They will use that for percentile calculation, which is a wrong way to go about it, but that is what they do. Now, if you look at the last 4 years also, you will see that between that the percentile brackets, right? For example, look at overall percentile of, say, 95 and 92, right? So 92 to 95 percentile. Last year, that was a gap of 0.75. The year prior, right, that gap, the gap was something like the 2.25. In the year prior to that, it was about 1.5. in then something like a 1.5. So these are very small gaps, right? I mean, it's just a matter of maybe a couple of questions that would create that gap. And that is where the problem lies. So even if you see something like a 98 to 99, it's a very marginal difference. So 98 to 99 would be something like a 2 mark difference, correct? Now, what I see or believe right now based on the initial reactions, right? And I met a lot of students. So unlike some of the past years, this year I met a lot of students at the center. In fact, there was one student that I met who offered me, like, we shared the ride for some time because I told him that I'm going to do a live analysis, and then he had a car, so it was much better, much more comfortable. So thank you to him that I was able to do the live analysis. But the point is, when I spoke to a lot of students, right, the overall thing was the paper was easy. So nobody said that the paper was difficult. See, people came out and said, okay, maybe I ran out of time, I was not able to complete it. All of that is fine. But if you just look at the absolute quality of questions, right, the quality of questions was on the lower side. So you would not find such easy questions even on NMAT. So on NMAT, you end up getting a lot of difficult questions. The DI, for example, of NMAT is pretty calculation intensive. If you look at even the critical reasoning is difficult, LR is difficult. But here, there were no questions which somebody could say, okay, fine, this was like a difficult question. Maybe somebody will say, okay, fine, easy or moderate, or something from an area maybe that I have not done, right? But then it wasn't like ultra difficult or anything. Okay? So overall, let's talk about the English section, the verbal section. Overall easy, I would say, if you look at the questions which were there. Now, with analogies, maybe for some people, because you don't know that particular word, maybe you could have found those questions a bit difficult. But fill in the blanks questions, again, if you had used logic, if your grammar is in place, you would have been able to answer the 9 total questions which appear related to fill in the blank, grammar, vocab, etc. Right? So overall, if you, again, that part of speech, the passive voice, fairly straightforward questions, nothing too difficult. One question on synonyms and then one question on the root. I think prognostication was the word that was there as to what is the meaning of pro in that particular word. So I would say 11 to 12 questions is what one could have attempted. If you're somebody who has been preparing well for the other exams or for CAT, you would have been in a position to do about 11 to 12 questions. Okay. Good students, maybe your verbal is really, really strong. You could have done maybe 13, 14, 15 questions as well, right? With and being almost sure of all the questions. Okay. All right. Let's move ahead. So speaking of the analytical and logical reasoning section, so overall, I would say easy to medium with about 18 to 19 attempts is what somebody could have done. The verbal reasoning part of it, like syllogisms, course of action. So what should be done, right? There's a bridge which has a structural damage, very serious structural damage. So what should be done? There is ethical course of action, right? So somebody leaves the mobile at the counter and you find that, then what do? Do you give it to barista, or you take that, or you put it on social media and stuff like that? Critical reasoning question, right? Which of the following, if true, would weaken the conclusion that is drawn in the statement? And the statement was a one-liner. Then implicit statements, cause and effect, statement argument. So all of these were easy to classify because they didn't have a lot of difficult words, right? It's just simple English. You read it, you apply the logic, and you will be able to answer these questions. Some of you maybe could have skipped a few questions of these, but I would say most of the questions were accessible. The non-verbal side had a few difficult questions, you can say. For example, series. A lot of people may not have immediately got onto that particular logic. So there was one particular series on one square, some square plus something, right? So I think something like that. So I was able to spot it. I think the final answer is 1005, if I'm not wrong, 196, right? So into 5 plus 5 square, that was the series, if I recall correctly. So yeah, that was slightly difficult, I would say. A lot of people would not have spotted it on the first glance. But some of the series were pretty straightforward, where you just take difference and then difference of difference, and you get to the answer. The linear arrangement was again easy. In both the questions, people facing north, there was a complexity in the form of, okay, somebody is the oldest and the youngest and so on and so forth. But because there were 5 to 6 people that you had to arrange with about 3 to 4 data points given about these people, it wasn't very difficult. So again, one easy, maybe one medium, if you consider the youngest, oldest one to be the medium one. Then matrix arrangement, again, one was on 4 people staying on the 4 floors and ordering some food items. Then there was another which is on 4 people living on 4 floors. even odd floors, and then their professions are given, right? So that was again sort of straightforward. But I think that question had some issue. A lot of people said that there's something off with that question. It is giving some contradictory information. I ended up marking pilot as the answer for that question. I don't know if it is right or wrong, but I guess a lot of people saying it's a wrong question. Now, we don't know what exactly action they will take, though they have mentioned that there will be like a review of if there's some wrong question that is found, there will be a committee that will review the question and so on. But I don't know what they're going to do with it. But I didn't read the question that particularly. When I started solving, I just somehow ended up with pilot. I marked it and then just I moved on, right? Family tree questions were again very simple. There was one which was like a coding decoding plus family tree, and then there was another one which was simple, though they made an assumption in that question, right? So in a way there is an assumption that is being made, that Suresh is the name of a male person, right? So that was the assumption that you had to make to answer that particular question. Calendar, surprisingly, 26 January 1950 is what they asked. So there were two questions of calendar. One was easy because it was some Feb 2012 and 16 or something like that. So 4 years gap, I think. But there was one question which was, what was the day on 26 Jan 1950? And if you're good at calendars, you would have got the answer. I think Thursday is the answer, if I'm not wrong. And yeah, so it can also be taken as a GK question. I mean, if somebody actually knows 26 Jan 1950, then of course it's like a nice thing to remember. But if you know it, great. If you don't, at least you would have calculated. But that is why it is a medium question. Clock question was easy. They had asked the reflex angle. So generally you see at particular time what is the angle between the two hands. This time they asked the reflex angle, but again, not very difficult. Then binary logic question, maybe a lot of people don't do binary logic questions because they get confused. And that is why you can maybe classify this particular question as the difficult question. Okay. Anjali, I think, was burger, if I'm not wrong. I can see chat. Somebody has asked if Anjali was burger. I think Anjali was burger. I'm not sure. I may have got it wrong answer. I don't know. Okay, so don't go by my answers. I know for sure I have made two mistakes. That much I'm aware of. One in the verbal section, I think I made a mistake. One in quant, for a very stupid mistake that I've done, like a calculation error. And in a hurry, I ended up marking the wrong one. Okay. Coding question again was not very, both coding questions are very, very simple. And that is where I entered in that zone where I started criticizing the paper setter a lot, right? So I was like, what are you setting? What kind of questions are you asking? It's a national level test. You want people to be in that 98 plus percentile zone and you want to segregate people. This is not the paper that you use to segregate aspirants, right? So clearly there was something wrong with the way paper was set. And I'll towards the end of the session, I'll talk about why this is so unfair. Because see, if you're somebody who has taken only Snap 1, and let's say you're not taking Snap 2 or 3, or maybe even if you're taking Snap 2 or 3, let's say Snap 2 and 3 papers are difficult, then it is very unfair because Snap 1 is then becomes like a very high scoring affair. So and then people will they will use these scores to calculate percentile. So it's not fair on students if you end up making slot 2 and 3 difficult. If you have similar papers, absolutely no problem. But if you have even moderate or a difficult paper in slot 2 or 3, definitely it's a problem. Okay. And let's come to the last section, the quant section. So overall, out of 20, I would say 15, 16 is what would have been like a good attempt. See, with quant, what happens is if quant comes out to be difficult, right, it segregates people nicely. But if it comes out to be easy, then it becomes a problem. So most of the questions were direct questions. You know the formula, you will be able to calculate it. As I said, I ended up making one silly mistake while calculating, and I didn't realize that when I did it. But anyway, so arithmetic, pretty straightforward. 7 questions were there. Time and work, if you see, very simple. I mean, even the language of the questions, you could have given something difficult at least. So there is a tank being filled by one pipe in 20 minutes, the other in 30 minutes. There is another one which is emptying it in 15 minutes. If all of them are open, then what will happen? This is not the question that you would ask in let's say a test that you're using to, I don't know how many people, maybe 70, 80,000 people taking the test. So definitely not something as simple as that. Maybe people can comment about their quant attempts. Um, how many did you attempt in quant? Somebody saying I did 18, I wanted to do all 20 as well. Yeah, I mean, it was possible to do that. I think the reflex angle was 197.5, 0.38 for the probability question. Yes, definitely, I remember that as well. But very easy. So there are some engineers, there are some, and again, the values also. There are 100 people. Some 60% are engineers, rest are what? Management graduates. And then there are engineers who have done an MBA. Then there are management graduates who have done some masters, which is not an MBA, and all of that. You can just put it in a 2 by 2 and finish that question off. So just because they used a lot of simple values, I mean, you can, all of you can see in the comment section also, right? There are people writing 19 attempts, 16, 17, 20, 18, 20, 19. In the previous years of Snap, this would not have happened. In most of the years, I don't recall in the last 4 to 5 years it being this easy when it comes to quant section. Even modern math questions were pretty straightforward. Question on logarithms. Let's say even if you don't know logarithms, right? You just know the basics. You could have actually used the options, substituted that in the question, and you would have got the right answer. Okay. Then geometry question, like mensuration question was there. Very simple values because everything is a multiple of 7. So the values where you have there is a circle, outer circle and inner circle, you have to find the area of the shaded region in between. 64 pi minus whatever, right? Something 36 pi, whatever it is, correct? Anything. So, but everything was like easily accessible. That was the problem. If somebody is good at quant, they would have definitely attempted 19 to 20 questions with definitely 90 or more, 90% or more accuracy. Then questions on numbers, algebra also pretty straightforward, nothing on data interpretation, right? Remainder was, I think, 7, if I recall correctly. Again, I know one question for sure I went wrong, but otherwise, I have a feeling that I think I would have got like 19 correct in quant. I may have gone wrong for maybe another question or so, but most of the questions were simple, right? Um, yeah, 88 was answer for one particular question, I remember. Then there was definitely something which was 48 Delhi, which was 4 factorial into 2 factorial. Tan theta question was again easy. But again, if you have done Trigo, then you think it is easy. Otherwise, you don't get into those things. So barring these couple of questions, I think pretty much everything was like doable, right? A and B working together, I think was what, 8 point something? I don't know, 8.4? I'm not very sure. Okay. Tan theta was what, 14, if I recall correctly. I'm not sure. I think 14. Okay. Voters was, yes, 1 lakh voters, 14 for the Trigo question. Okay. I'm not going to say which question I got wrong. It's really silly. I'm not even going to talk about it because I made a really silly calculation error there. It is a very shameful thing. Otherwise, I think I would have been confident of all 20 questions. But anyway, yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the cutoffs because most of you would be interested in knowing that as to overall commentary, what do I expect it to be? So, see, the problem is now because it's an easy paper, right? Most of the students here also and the students I met, the other mentors that I spoke to, everybody said easy, 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 which means that the scores will go up. Now, how much it will go up is generally the difficult part of estimating, but I would say very close to that is why I've highlighted that thing. Snap 2023, if you add 2 to 3 marks to this, is what you're looking at when it comes to today's paper. So I would say that 99.9, which you see in something like a Snap 23 was 50.25. I think that should go up to about 52. Okay. See, somebody can technically get 100% accuracy also, not take unnecessary risk, end up around 52, 53 attempts and get everything right also in this paper, right? And that is why somewhere around 52 is where 99.90 will be. A 99.50 will be very close to 49 or 50. I would say 49 maybe, considering a lot of students may have missed a few questions here and there or made some silly mistakes like I did. A 99 percentile would be about 47.25 or 47.5. A 98 would be roughly around 46 to 47. So when I came out of the test hall, I ended up saying 98 would be around 48. But after speaking to a few students, I realized that there were some questions which were which people didn't mark or they didn't want to take unnecessary risk, etc. So I would revise that estimate a little bit and say a 98 percentile would be maybe somewhere close to a 46 or a 47, not 48. 48 will be a little bit too high. 48 would be, I think, like a 99 percentile, whereas a 98 percentile would be maybe 2 marks less than that. So you can say around 46. Okay. Similarly, a 90, you can add basically +2 in that table and you will get my today's estimates. Okay. How much should we attempt for second attempt since we need to top this attempt? Okay. So see, if the paper turns out to be somewhat similar, right, then the more the merrier. I mean, there's nothing to do apart from attempting more and more questions, but of course also take care of the accuracy, right? Why I'm again say that is because let's say instead of doing all 20 questions in quant today, if I'd done let's say only 19, right, I would have got 19 maybe. But because I got one question wrong, I'm basically at 18.75. So that is where the difference lies. Every 0.25 also makes a difference. So you should not be taking unnecessary risk is what I would recommend to you as a genuine aspirant. For me, it doesn't matter. So I ended up marking everything, all 60 questions I just marked. Even for verbal vocab-based questions, wherever I'm not sure, I ended up marking it because it doesn't matter. But then as a serious aspirant, you should also be aware of the fact that there will be a lot of students in that 0.25 differential, right? Look at the lower levels, especially look at say something like an 80-85 percentile gap, right? Hardly anything. I mean, in most cases, it is not even 2 marks difference, right? So that is why be careful with it. But definitely, if it comes out to be similar, I think you are expecting the table of SNAP 2023 and you add 2 to it. Okay. What's the usual cutoff for SIBM, SCHM, SCMHRD Pune is about 98 percentile. So that is why the figure to look for in this particular table, it is 43.25. But as I said, you add a little bit to this, somewhere around 46 should be like a 98 percentile is my estimate right now. Strategy for next attempt of IMS mocks. Okay, so see, IMS mocks are slightly on the difficult side. Now, if you can do well on a difficult paper, you should be able to do really well on an easy paper, right? That is what happened today with most of the students. And why, again, my immediate reaction was that what sort of a paper is this? I mean, in fact, there were some students and I ended up telling them what is Snap charging for, right? If you're setting like a really easy paper. The immediate reaction was because in the past, I haven't had years where I sort of sat comfortably towards the end. In most years, I have not been able to complete the paper. I definitely end up making a few silly mistakes. That's not the issue, but I had a lot of time left at the end, and I didn't recheck my answer. So that's another issue. But I had time left, and a lot of students also said that they had time left. So if you have more time left and you've completed everything, it's a clear sign of the paper being on the easier side. Okay, so that is why. Was the question valid voters or how many voters? I think it was total voters, if I recall correctly. So it should be a lakh. I think it was total votes, not total valid votes. Okay. So anyway, right now there's no point getting into discussing these things but as somebody who maybe let's say has not taken today's test but is going to appear for SNAP 2 or 3, do not change your attempt strategy in any sense, right? I mean, the difficulty will ensure that you're able to attempt more questions. If it comes out to be on the easier side, you'll end up attempting more, correct? Does the way in which you appear for the paper or approach the paper change? No. So I always have had a fixed strategy. Start with VRC, finish it off in 7-8 minutes, then go to quant and then go to LR, or VRC, then LR, then quant. Today I did VRC, LR, quant. I finished one round where I exhausted all the easy questions and I found about 47 easy questions. So 45 to 47 questions is what I would rate as easy. About 10 questions as moderate and the remaining as difficult. That is how I would rate. Strategy for next attempt IMS mocks. Okay, so for next attempt, strategy does not change in any way. What happened today, if you have taken the paper, great, you know what sort of questions were asked. You continue to practice what we have given you, right? So in the, you have ADAMAT Maximizer, you have ADAMAT Masterclasses, you have Snap mocks. You basically continue to do the stuff that you have done so far. Just because the paper is easy doesn't mean that you need to change your strategy in any way. The attempt strategy will remain exactly the same. Okay. Looking at ADMAT Masterclass module is going good before. I answered your question, right, Siddharth? Strategy for next attempt IMS mocks and okay, IMS mocks and what? IMS mocks and you don't have to do anything. If the paper is going to be this easy, honestly, you don't have to do anything, right? IMS mocks are on the slightly higher difficulty side. you wouldn't do so well on the IMS mocks, but they are preparing you for the worst case scenario, right? So I think you should continue to take IMS mocks, do ADMAT maximizers, which is about 800 questions of SNAP and MAT level. And yeah, that's about it. Okay. All right. So I think, yeah, as I said, right, IMS mocks are difficult. So you just do them. You see, just because the paper today turned out to be easy doesn't mean that the next attempt will be easy. Maybe it is at the moderate level. We don't know. It will be worse if it is moderate. I mean, it's not fair on the candidates in that case because today was easy and you can't have suddenly like a moderate paper in slot two. What should we expect as a difficulty level for attempt two? No, no estimate to be done, right? I mean, no guesswork. You just go in with that mindset that, okay, today I'm going to get a paper which is somewhere on these lines, 21, 22, 23, 24. And if you're targeting, say an SIBM, SCMHRD, right? What it tells you is that mostly you should be targeting something like a 40 plus. If you look at last couple of years, 39.75, 43.25, one year in between where it was difficult, and then 41. So for somebody who's aiming for SIBM, SCMHRD, you always target 40 plus score, right? So yeah, okay. 50 attempts, total 16 in QA, all confirmed, right? That's pretty solid, Sarthak, good job. So I think that's what, so 16 questions were pretty accessible, 15, 16 questions. SIBM cutoff approximately 98 percentile should be somewhere around 46. 46 to 47 maybe on the higher side, but 46 at least, I would say. Because anything less than that is, I would be then underestimating students. Which was easy, NMAT or Snap, hands down. I mean, absolutely no comparison between the paper of NMAT that I attempted this year versus what I attempted today. Right? 25 is a weird year, is what Harshit is saying. Either paper is resulting in high cutoff or the paper is too difficult. Yeah, I mean, it happens. So all the tests have some sort of issues. You just have to go with it, right? Just go with the flow, take tests, see what happens, and keep doing this till the season gets over. And hopefully at the end of it, you have something good working out for you. Okay. Um, what was the answer for the market sales LR question? Marketing sales LR question. What was the question? I don't remember. Some quarter three, is that the one that you're asking? I think minimum profit at in quarter three. That was the answer for it, I guess. Category cutoffs are very difficult to estimate. So won't be able to comment on it because you don't know how many students are taking from individual categories. SIBM Bangalore cutoff, generally 90-92 percentile is what they look for. So somewhere around 40 marks, I think should be good enough for SIBM Bengaluru this year in this paper. Okay. All right. Okay, fine. I think we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining. I wish all of you all the best. Hope this interaction has helped you. And I'll see you soon in some or the other video. Till then, bye everyone. Take care.